AITA for refusing to take down the chore contract I made for my stepkids, even though my husband says I've humiliated them. I, 38F, have been married to my husband, Mark, 42M, for 3 years. He has 2 kids from his previous marriage, Jake, 16, and Lily, 14. Their mom passed away 6 years ago, and while I never tried to replace her, I've tried to create a home that feels structured, safe, and fair. For context, I'm very organized by nature. I'm a project manager, so I live by spreadsheets, schedules, and rules. When I moved in with Mark and the kids, I noticed there was absolutely zero structure. The kids basically did what they wanted. Dishes piled up, their rooms were disasters, and Mark just shrugged everything off with they've been through a lot. I understood that grief affects people differently, so I didn't push too hard at first. But after a year, the house started to feel like a frat dorm. I was doing most of the cleaning, cooking, and general mental load. Mark would sometimes help, but the kids didn't lift a finger. When I asked Jake to take out the trash once, he told me, "That's Dad's job." So earlier this year, after trying multiple conversations and chore charts that were ignored, I decided to create something more formal, a household responsibility agreement. It wasn't meant to be legal, just clear. It was a typed document that laid out expectations and consequences. Here's how it worked. Each person, including me and Mark, had assigned weekly chores. If someone didn't complete their task by Sunday night, they'd lose a privilege for the following week, like phone time, use of the car, or hosting friends. I also included bonus chores that came with rewards like extra allowance, choosing dinner, or movie night picks. I printed it, framed it, and hung it in the kitchen. It looked professional, not punitive. I even added a section at the top that said, "We're a team, and teams work together." The first week went surprisingly well. The kids did their chores, though reluctantly, and the house finally felt manageable. But by week 3, Jake stopped cooperating. He left dirty dishes everywhere, ignored his laundry, and then told Mark I was acting like a boss, not a mom. Mark told me to ease up and pick my battles. I said that this wasn't about control, it was about mutual respect. Then came the breaking point 2 weeks ago. I came home from work to find the kitchen trashed. Dirty pans, crumbs, and open containers everywhere. When I asked who was responsible, Jake laughed and said, "Not me. I didn't sign that stupid contract." I calmly told him that everyone in the house was responsible for keeping it clean, signed or not, and that he'd lose Wi-Fi access for a week if he didn't help. He yelled that I wasn't his mom, stormed upstairs, and slammed his door so hard a picture fell off the wall. When Mark got home, he sided with him, saying I was humiliating the kids by treating them like employees. I reminded him that the contract wasn't about punishment. It was about accountability. He said, "They're teenagers, not office workers. They already hate that thing on the wall." I told him that if I didn't enforce it, I'd go insane doing everything myself. I said, "I'm not their maid, Mark. If you want me to be, then let's be honest about that." He got quiet and later texted me from the living room. Yes, actually texted me, saying that I should take the chore contract down because it makes the kids feel like guests in their own home. That really hurt because I've done everything to make this house a home for them. I redecorated their rooms to their liking, cooked their favorite meals, attended school events, and tried to be supportive. But apparently, that means nothing if I ask them to clean a bathroom once a week. Now both Jake and Lily are giving me the cold shoulder. Lily told me, "You're trying too hard to make this your house." I asked her what she meant, and she said, "It was fine before you came. We didn't need rules." I told Mark that maybe I should just stop cleaning altogether, let them live in the mess they create. He told me not to play martyr, and that being an adult means keeping things running, even when others slack off. So now I'm stuck. The framed household responsibility agreement is still hanging in the kitchen. Mark wants it gone. The kids refuse to acknowledge it. And me? I'm just tired of feeling like the villain for expecting basic cooperation. Last night, we had a huge argument. Mark said, "You can't structure love. You can't contract your way into being part of a family." I snapped back, "And you can't love your kids so much that you raise them to be helpless." He called that cruel. I told him what's actually cruel is letting his kids believe the world will always excuse them because they've had a hard time. Now I'm sleeping in the guest room. He's barely talking to me. I feel guilty because I know they've all been through loss, but I also feel disrespected. I'm not asking for perfection, just partnership. I talked to my sister about it, and she said, "You're not wrong to want help, but hanging up a contract makes it look like you're running a company, not a family." She said if I really want respect, I need to build trust first, not systems. But I can't help thinking that if I were a biological mom, no one would accuse me of being controlling for asking her kids to do chores. So I'm sitting here staring at this framed contract, wondering if I really went too far. Part of me wants to take it down just to keep the peace, but another part feels like I'd be setting the precedent that my boundaries don't matter. Maybe it was too formal. Maybe I should have made a colorful chart instead of typed agreement. But I still believe in accountability. I didn't marry Mark to become an unpaid housekeeper, and I didn't join this family to be ignored. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to take down the chore contract, even though my husband says I've humiliated his kids. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to take my sister's kids after she passed away because I don't want to raise them like I was raised. So I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family. My sister, Emily, 34F, and I grew up with parents who were very old-school strict. Everything was about appearances, rules, and control. There was no room for emotion, creativity, or individuality. Our dad was military, and our mom was obsessed with church reputation and social status. We weren't allowed to have friends over, watch inappropriate shows, or even express anger. Emily was the golden child. She followed the rules, got perfect grades, married young, had kids, and stayed close to our parents. I was the rebellious one. I went no contact with my parents at 23 after my dad threw me out for dating someone he didn't approve of. Emily and I stayed somewhat in touch, but we were never close. She'd make passive-aggressive comments about my alternative lifestyle. I'm child-free, tattooed, and bisexual, but she was polite enough that we could talk occasionally. Fast forward to last year. Emily and her husband were in a car accident. He died instantly, and she passed away 2 days later. They left behind 2 kids, Mia, 10, and Ethan, 8. It's awful. I went to the funeral, which was tense because my parents and I hadn't seen each other in nearly a decade. They acted like everything was fine and tried to rope me into family photos like nothing happened. A week later, my parents called. They told me Emily had listed me as the emergency guardian for the kids if anything happened. I was stunned. Emily and I had never discussed this. Apparently, she added my name years ago when she first made her will. My parents immediately assumed I would take the children in because family takes care of family. I told them I wasn't sure. I live alone in a small 1-bedroom apartment in the city. I don't make a ton of money. I don't even have a car because I commute by train. I'm not maternal. I build a life that works for me. Quiet, stable, independent. The idea of suddenly being responsible for 2 grieving children felt impossible. My parents offered to help, by which they meant they wanted to move the kids into their home, and I would technically be the guardian so they could still control everything. I know exactly what kind of life those kids would have with my parents. Suffocating rules, emotional neglect masked as discipline, and no room to be themselves. I couldn't let that happen. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't give them the kind of care and stability they need either. I asked if there were other relatives, maybe our cousins or my aunt in Texas. My parents said no one else could handle the responsibility. I asked about the kids' paternal grandparents, but apparently they're in poor health. I took a week to think. I met with the kids a few times, brought them ice cream, tried to talk to them. They were sweet, but so lost. Mia kept asking if she'd have to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house forever. She said she didn't like how Grandpa always yells and how Grandma tells her to stop crying because it's ungrateful. That gutted me. I realized I didn't want to recreate the same cold, controlled environment we grew up in. But I also knew I wasn't equipped to parent. I talked to a lawyer and learned I could decline guardianship, which would let the court find another placement. I told my parents my decision. They exploded. My dad said I was spitting on my sister's grave and condemning those children to the system. My mom cried, saying I was choosing selfishness over love. I told them love isn't enough if I can't provide a safe, stable home. They accused me of being dramatic and said, "You'll regret this when you're old and alone." The lawyer told me the kids might end up with a foster family unless a relative stepped up. I felt horrible, but I also knew that if I took them out of guilt, it would only lead to resentment from me and probably from them too. A few months passed. I got updates through the lawyer that the kids were placed temporarily with a foster couple while long-term guardianship was being decided. Then something unexpected happened. The couple wanted to adopt them. They're both teachers, financially stable, and have experience with trauma-informed care. The kids apparently love them. They enrolled in a new school, got counseling, and seem to be doing better. My parents are furious. They blame me for losing our family and refuse to talk to me now. They say I gave away Emily's children like they were someone else's problem. They've even told distant relatives that I abandoned my niece and nephew. Meanwhile, I've stayed in quiet contact with a foster couple through the lawyer just to make sure the kids are okay. They sent me a few photos, the kids smiling, painting, playing soccer. They look happy, genuinely happy. I still cry sometimes, thinking about Emily and wondering if she'd hate me for this. Maybe she thought I could give her kids the life we never had. Maybe she hoped I'd break the cycle. But the truth is, I think I did, just not in the way she expected. I didn't let them go to our parents. I didn't repeat the same mistakes. I just made sure they had a chance at something better. Now some of my friends are split on whether I did the right thing. A few say I was right to protect my peace and the kids' well-being, that forcing myself into parenthood I didn't want would have been cruel. Others say family means sacrifice, and that I should have stepped up no matter what. Sometimes I wonder if I'm heartless. I didn't choose this situation, but I made a choice that will define those kids' lives forever. I think about them every day, and sometimes I feel like I failed them, even though logically I know they're in a better place. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to take in my sister's kids after she died, even though I was their legal guardian. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she ruined my wedding to prove a point. So I, 29F, got married 3 months ago to my husband, Daniel, 31M. We had been together for 5 years, and our wedding was something we both saved for and planned meticulously. I'm not super fancy, but I'm organized. I like things neat and calm, and I wanted my wedding to be the same, simple, beautiful, drama-free. Unfortunately, I have a sister, Leah, 27F, who thrives on chaos like it's caffeine. Leah has always been the kind of person who speaks her mind, which sounds nice until you realize it means says whatever she wants no matter how cruel. Growing up, she loved to tease me for being boring and uptight. When I got engaged, she rolled her eyes and said she'd be shocked if I didn't have a meltdown trying to control everything. Despite that, I made her my maid of honor because I wanted to include her. I thought maybe it would bring us closer. Big mistake. From the start, she complained about every part of the wedding. She hated the bridesmaid dresses, too modest, mocked my color palette, beige, how romantic, and kept suggesting things that were completely opposite of what I wanted. When I politely declined, she joked that I was being bridezilla light. I let it go because I didn't want to fight. About a month before the wedding, she came to me with this big idea for a fun surprise during the reception. I asked what it was, and she just said, "You'll love it. Trust me." I said no surprises. I'm not a fan of attention, and I wanted to know what was happening. She pouted and said I was sucking the joy out of everything. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything went perfectly until the reception. During the speeches, my dad said a few sweet words, and then it was Leah's turn. She got up there with a mischievous smile that immediately made my stomach drop. Her speech started normal enough, talking about our childhood, how we used to play dress-up, and how she always knew I'd be the bossy bride one day. People laughed awkwardly. Then she said she wanted to show everyone who the real my name is. She pulled out a projector remote and started a slideshow that I had never seen before. It was a compilation of photos and short clips from our teenage years. Me in braces, me crying after a breakup, me tripping at a school talent show, even a video of me at 14 angrily singing along to some emo song after she stole my sweater. The whole thing was humiliating. Everyone was laughing, not in a mean way, but the kind of laughter where you know they're uncomfortable but can't help themselves. I sat there frozen, holding Daniel's hand so tight my knuckles turned white. When it ended, Leah laughed and said, "See, she's not always perfect. Congrats, sis." Daniel stood up and said, "That was inappropriate." Leah just shrugged and said, "It was a joke. She needs to loosen up." I excused myself and cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes. My mom came to comfort me and said Leah didn't mean it that way. I ended up going back out to keep the peace, but the night felt ruined. I barely danced, and I could feel the tension everywhere. After the wedding, I didn't speak to Leah. She texted once saying, "You're seriously mad?" It was funny. I ignored her. She later sent me a long message saying I needed to forgive her because holding grudges isn't healthy. I still didn't respond. A month later, she called me crying. She had been laid off and needed a place to stay for a bit. She said she'd pay rent once she got back on her feet. Daniel and I had just moved into our house, and while we had a spare room, I told her no. I said I wasn't comfortable living with someone who thought humiliating me in front of my entire family was funny. She flipped out. She accused me of punishing her for a joke, said I was heartless, and told me family should come before hurt feelings. My parents called and said Leah was having a hard time and that it would be the right thing to help her. I told them I could help her financially for a week if needed, but she couldn't live with us. They said I was being cruel. Now my parents are barely speaking to me, and Leah is telling everyone that I chose my pride over family. A few relatives even messaged me saying I should let bygones be bygones because she's your sister. But here's the thing. I'm not proud of holding a grudge, but I genuinely don't feel safe around her anymore. The wedding thing wasn't just embarrassing. It felt cruelly intentional. She knew I didn't want surprises. She knew I hated being mocked. She did it anyway. And now I'm supposed to open my home to her like nothing happened? Daniel supports me completely. He says Leah's behavior is manipulative and that my family's reaction is classic, enable the troublemaker stuff. Still, I can't shake the guilt because I know she's struggling. Last week, Leah sent me a long text that said, "You'll regret choosing a man over your family. Sisters are forever." That message sealed it for me. She hasn't changed. She's not sorry. She just wants control. Now my mom is trying to plan a family dinner to talk things out, but I told her I'm not ready. She said I'm tearing the family apart. Daniel thinks I should stand firm, but my anxiety is through the roof. Part of me wants to give in just to stop the tension, but another part of me knows that if I cave now, Leah will never respect my boundaries again. So now I'm sitting here wondering if I really am the villain. Maybe I should have just laughed it off, like everyone says. Maybe refusing to help her when she's struggling makes me heartless. But I also can't ignore the fact that she deliberately humiliated me on the most important day of my life and never once apologized for it. AITA for refusing to help her after what she did. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after what he said about my son. So, this is a long one, but context matters. I, 34F, have a 9-year-old son named Evan. His dad isn't in the picture. He dipped when I was pregnant, so it's just been me and Evan his whole life. I work full-time as a nurse, and my younger sister, Chloe, 28F, has always been close to me. She doesn't have kids and has been with her fiancé, Ryan, 31M, for about 3 years. I used to like Ryan. He seemed polite, funny, and like he genuinely cared for Chloe. But over the past year, I've started noticing things that made me uneasy. Ryan has this honest-to-a-fault personality that everyone excuses, but to me, it just comes across as him being rude and judgmental. He makes jokes that are really just thinly veiled insults. For example, when I once told him I couldn't make it to a family dinner because I had a night shift, he said, "Must be nice to get paid to sit around and check people's pulses." Everyone laughed, but it rubbed me the wrong way. Anyway, Chloe and Ryan got engaged last spring, and they're planning their wedding for next summer. The problem started last month when they came to visit for the weekend. They live about 4 hours away, and I told them they could stay at my house instead of paying for a hotel. The first night, things were fine. Evan loves company, and he was showing Ryan his drawings. Evan's into art. He spends hours sketching superheroes and fantasy creatures. Ryan asked to see them, and Evan proudly brought out his sketchbook. Ryan flipped through it and said, "These are interesting. Not really what boys your age usually draw." "Huh? You don't play sports?" Evan said he didn't like sports, and Ryan chuckled and said, "Well, maybe your mom can sign you up for something to toughen you up. Can't have you spending all your time with crayons." I saw Evan's face fall, and I immediately told Ryan that wasn't appropriate. Ryan brushed it off with, "Relax, I'm just teasing. It's good for kids to hear the truth sometimes." Later that night, Evan asked me if there was something wrong with him because he liked drawing and not soccer. That broke me a little. I reassured him that there's absolutely nothing wrong with him and that he can like whatever he wants. The next day, things got worse. We were having lunch in my backyard, and Ryan started talking about kids these days being too soft. He went on about how, when he was 9, he was already helping his dad build stuff in the garage, not coloring fairies. Then he laughed and said, "Evan will grow out of it, hopefully before high school. Don't want him getting bullied." I told him flat out that I didn't appreciate him implying my son was weak or weird. Chloe tried to defuse the situation, saying Ryan didn't mean it like that, but I could tell she was embarrassed. Ryan doubled down, saying, "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. You can't coddle boys these days." I told them both I didn't want that kind of talk in my house. Ryan rolled his eyes, and the rest of the meal was tense. That night, after Evan went to bed, I confronted Ryan privately. I told him that his comments were out of line and that if he couldn't respect my son, he wasn't welcome to stay here. He told me I was overreacting and too sensitive. I told him that was exactly the problem. He acts like being cruel is a personality trait. Chloe came into the room halfway through the argument. Ryan told her, "Your sister's kicking me out because I said her kid should play sports." I told her that wasn't the full story, and when I explained everything, Chloe just sighed and said, "He didn't mean to hurt anyone's feelings." I told her I didn't care about intent, just the impact. My son felt bad about himself because of Ryan's words, and I wasn't going to have that under my roof. I said he needed to find a hotel for the night. Ryan looked genuinely shocked and asked, "You're really doing this?" I said yes. Chloe said she'd go with him, which I appreciated, but she was clearly upset. They packed their stuff and left around 10 p.m. The next morning, Chloe texted me saying she understood I was protecting Evan, but she thought I humiliated Ryan and made things unnecessarily dramatic. My mom also called me later saying I should have just let it go because Ryan's from a different generation. He's 3 years older than me. Since then, things have been tense. Ryan apparently told some extended family members that I kicked him out for giving parenting advice. Now a few relatives think I'm overprotective and that I should have just talked it out calmly instead of making a scene. Chloe says Ryan feels like I hate him now and that I'm going to ruin the family dynamic if I don't apologize before the wedding. I told her I won't apologize for standing up for my son, but I also don't want this to affect our relationship. I even said Ryan's welcome back in my home if he can treat Evan respectfully. She said she'd think about it, but that Ryan feels too disrespected to visit again unless I apologize. Here's the thing. I do want Chloe at my house and in our lives. She's my sister, and Evan loves her. But I can't and won't tolerate someone who makes my kid feel small or broken for liking what he likes. Evan's a kind, creative little boy. He doesn't need toughening up. He needs support and kindness. Now I'm wondering if I handled it wrong. Maybe I should have just ignored Ryan and avoided conflict until they left. But part of me feels like that would have shown Evan that it's okay for people to talk down to him as long as they're family. And that's not a message I want to send. It's been a few weeks, and Chloe hasn't really reached out beyond short texts. My mom keeps pushing me to smooth things over, saying families need to keep the peace. But I'm tired of being the one who swallows disrespect to avoid drama. So now I'm stuck. Was I too harsh for kicking him out? Should I have just set boundaries without making them leave? Or is it fair to draw a line when someone crosses into belittling my kid in his own home? AITA? AITA for refusing to take my sister's kids after she passed away and letting them go to foster care instead? 34F. Never thought I'd be writing something like this, but my family has basically declared war on me, and I honestly don't know if I'm wrong anymore. My older sister, Jenna, 38F, passed away 3 months ago in a car accident. She left behind 2 kids, Lily, 9, and Max, 6. Their father has been out of the picture for years. He was abusive and lost parental rights after a long court battle. So when Jenna died, there was no obvious guardian lined up. I was close to Jenna growing up, but we drifted apart in our 20s. She got married young, had kids early, and was a stay-at-home mom. I, on the other hand, moved to another state for college, built a career, and decided not to have kids. I work as a software engineer, live alone in a small apartment, and honestly, I love my quiet, structured life. I have anxiety, and I manage it well when I have routine and control. Jenna used to joke that I was too robotic to be maternal, which I always shrugged off, but I think she meant it. When Jenna died, her will named me as the first choice for guardian. I didn't even know she'd done that. She'd never asked me directly, never told me. Finding out in that lawyer's office hit me like a truck. The lawyer said she probably just assumed I'd step up as family. I didn't give an answer immediately. I told the social worker I needed time to think. My mom and brother, 31M, immediately started pushing me. Mom said it was obvious that I'd take them. My brother, who lives abroad with his wife and newborn, said he couldn't uproot his family, but that I was financially stable and single, so I had no excuse. But I couldn't just say yes. My job is demanding. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I genuinely don't know the first thing about raising kids. I also didn't have a strong relationship with Lily and Max. I saw them once or twice a year. They always seemed sweet but shy, and I always felt awkward around them. I took a week off work to think about it. I met with the kids at my mom's house a few times during that period. They were grieving, confused, and constantly asking when their mom would come back. It broke my heart, but it also terrified me. I realized how unprepared I was emotionally and practically. The social worker told me that if I didn't take them, they'd go into foster care unless another relative stepped up. My mom said she couldn't take them because of her health. My brother said he couldn't because of logistics. So it came down to me. After 2 weeks, I told the social worker I couldn't do it. I said I wasn't capable of providing the stable, nurturing environment they needed. She was kind about it, but I could tell she was disappointed. The kids were placed with a foster family that specializes in caring for children who have experienced trauma. When my family found out, all hell broke loose. My mom called me heartless and said I'd abandoned my own blood. My brother told me I'd destroyed what little family we had left. Some extended relatives have stopped talking to me entirely. Here's the thing. I've been trying to stay in touch with the kids through their social worker. I've sent letters, gifts, and even visited once. The foster parents seemed genuinely good, warm, patient, and stable. Lily and Max looked more at ease there than I'd ever seen them. Still, every visit ends with my mom crying and telling me I could fix everything by taking them in. I've tried to explain that parenting isn't something you can just improvise. I didn't want to take them and only to fail them later. I've seen what happens when people take kids out of guilt or pressure. It doesn't end well for anyone. Last week, things got worse. My mom invited me to dinner to talk, but when I arrived, she had the kids there. No warning. She said, "See, they still think of you as Auntie M. You can make this right." Lily hugged me and asked if she could come live with me now. I froze. I didn't know what to say. I told her gently that she was safe where she was and that I'd always visit her, but my mom lost it. She screamed that I was killing her grandchildren's spirit. I left in tears. Now everyone says I'm the villain. A cousin even posted something vague on Facebook about people who turn their backs on family. I've started doubting myself. Did I do the wrong thing? Could I have made it work? The truth is, part of me feels guilty every day. I think about Lily and Max constantly. I've even looked into whether I could take guardianship later, but I know the foster family is hoping to adopt them. The kids seem happy there, and I don't want to uproot them again just to soothe my own guilt. Still, every time my mom calls me cold or selfish, it stings. She keeps saying family is supposed to step up, and I keep wondering if I failed some moral test. Last night, I had a long talk with my therapist. She told me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're not equipped to handle something. That loving someone can also mean letting them be somewhere they're truly safe and supported. I want to believe that, but I can't shake the feeling that everyone will always see me as the one who abandoned her sister's children. I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to be the bad guy in my own family. But I also didn't want to lie to myself or those kids by pretending I could be something I'm not. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to take in my sister's kids after she passed and letting them go into foster care instead? AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me after she ruined my wedding? I'm a 32-year-old woman, and my sister, Emma, 29F, and I used to be extremely close. Growing up, our parents always compared us. She was the free spirit, while I was the responsible one. I took that role seriously. I got a stable job, saved money, and eventually bought a small house. Emma bounced from job to job, lived with different friends, and constantly borrowed money from me. I didn't mind helping her out, but over the years it started to feel one-sided. Last year, I got engaged to my fiancé, Luke, 34M. We've been together for 5 years, and we're finally in a place financially where we could afford a small wedding. From the start, Emma wanted to be heavily involved. She volunteered to be my maid of honor, which I agreed to because, despite everything, I wanted her to feel included. She said she wanted to throw me the best bachelorette party ever, and that she'd help organize decorations and flowers to save us money. For months, things seemed fine until I started noticing odd behavior. Emma would forget to pass along vendor messages, or she'd claim she'd paid deposits that never went through. When I followed up with vendors myself, I discovered nothing had been booked. I confronted her gently, and she burst into tears, saying she was overwhelmed and that I was being ungrateful against my better judgment. I forgave her and took over all the remaining planning myself. A week before the wedding, she called me saying she'd lost her job and couldn't afford her bridesmaid dress balance. I offered to pay for it because I didn't want drama before the big day. She thanked me profusely, but I later found out she used the money to go on a weekend trip with some friends. When I asked her about it, she admitted it but said, "You wouldn't understand, I needed to clear my head." Luke wanted me to replace her as maid of honor, but my mom begged me not to embarrass the family, so I let it go. The wedding day came, and at first, everything was beautiful. Emma arrived late, claiming she couldn't find her shoes. She didn't help with any setup, didn't check on me, and was constantly on her phone. But I told myself to focus on marrying Luke. During the reception, Emma got very drunk, like slurring her words, spilling drinks drunk. At one point, she grabbed the mic and decided to give an impromptu speech. She started by saying how happy she was for me, but quickly veered into this bizarre rant about how Luke isn't the first guy my sister planned to marry, and how I always think I'm better than everyone else. She then brought up an old story from college where I supposedly stole a boyfriend from her, which was completely false. We had both dated the same guy years apart. Guests were stunned. My father had to pull her off the stage. I was humiliated. I ran out crying, and Luke followed me. I honestly considered calling the whole reception off. Emma spent the rest of the night sobbing and saying she didn't mean it like that. The next morning, she posted a long apology on Facebook that started with, "I guess my speech was too real for some people." I blocked her for a few months after that. My parents begged me to forgive her, saying she was struggling mentally and didn't mean any harm. I eventually decided to move past it for the sake of family peace, but I made it clear to Emma that our relationship would be strictly surface level. Fast forward to 2 months ago. Emma called me crying, saying her boyfriend kicked her out and she had nowhere to go. She asked if she could stay with me and Luke just for a few weeks until she got back on her feet. Luke immediately said no, reminding me of what she did at the wedding and how toxic she'd been for years. I felt torn. I didn't want to see her homeless, but I also didn't want that chaos in our home. I told Emma I couldn't let her move in, but I offered to help her with a deposit on a room if she found one. She flipped out, saying I was holding a grudge and that family helps family. I reminded her that I did help, financially, emotionally, repeatedly, and she's always taken advantage. She screamed at me, calling me heartless and saying that I chose my husband over my own blood. That night, my mom called, furious, saying Emma was sleeping in her car, that it was on me. I offered again to help pay for a motel for a week, but Mom said I should let her come home. I said no. Luke backed me up and said he wouldn't feel comfortable with Emma in our house after everything she's done. For the past month, my family has been split. My parents barely speak to me. My aunt told me privately that Emma has always been manipulative and that I'm right to draw boundaries. But my mom keeps saying I'm being cruel for not helping my sister when she's in need. The final straw was last week when Emma posted on Facebook again, saying, "It's crazy how people who claim to love you will leave you on the street over something you said years ago. Guess blood doesn't matter anymore." A few of her friends commented things like, "That's so cold," and "Your sister sounds awful." Some of our relatives saw it and started messaging me, accusing me of being selfish. Now I'm second-guessing myself. I could technically let her stay for a few weeks. Our guest room is empty, but I know it wouldn't just be a few weeks. It would turn into months, more excuses, more drama, and eventually another betrayal. But every time I think about her sleeping in her car, I feel guilty. Part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh. Maybe I should be more understanding. She clearly has issues, and she's still my sister. But another part of me thinks that if I cave now, she'll never learn to take responsibility for her actions. My husband is standing firm. He told me that if Emma moves in, he'll stay with his brother until she leaves because he refuses to relive that nightmare. He's not giving me an ultimatum, but I know how deeply the wedding incident affected him. He still gets visibly upset when people mention it. I keep replaying everything in my head. Emma crying, my mom yelling, my husband quietly saying he can't go through that again, and I just feel stuck between guilt and resentment. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me after she humiliated me at my own wedding and repeatedly took advantage of my kindness? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded my fiancé from the guest list? I, 29F, have always been close to my family, especially my sister, 31F, who is getting married next summer. Growing up, we were inseparable despite our occasional fights like any siblings. I met my fiancé, Alex, 30M, about 2 years ago, and since then, he's become part of the family. My sister always seemed to like him and even joked about how she hoped I'd find someone like him sooner. When my sister announced her engagement, I was thrilled and supportive. The wedding plan started taking shape quickly, and she said she wanted a small, intimate ceremony. I understood that and respected her wishes. However, things started to get complicated when she began discussing the guest list. She told me she was limiting the number of people because the venue was small and she wanted it to be mostly immediate family and close friends. The problem arose when I found out my fiancé was not invited. My sister said the venue could only accommodate a small number of people and that because Alex was not family, he wouldn't be on the list. I was shocked because in all the conversations leading up to this, my sister never hinted that she planned to exclude him. I confronted her about it, asking why she was making that decision without discussing it with me first. She responded by saying that since the wedding was a family event, only blood relatives were invited, and because Alex wasn't family, he couldn't come. I explained that by that logic, her own in-laws and my parents' partners wouldn't be invited, and those people were definitely on the list. She said those were exceptions, but refused to budge on Alex. She insisted it was nothing personal, just a matter of space. I tried to explain how hurtful it was to exclude my fiancé from such a big milestone, especially since we planned to spend our lives together, but she seemed unmoved. My parents suggested maybe we could talk it out more calmly, but my sister kept repeating the same reasoning. I decided to sit down with Alex and ask what he thought. He was upset, but told me he didn't want to pressure me or cause family drama. He said he understood it wasn't personal, but it hurt that my sister didn't want him there. We agreed that the wedding was important, but so was standing up for our relationship. When I told my sister I wouldn't attend the wedding unless Alex was invited, she accused me of being unreasonable and making the wedding about me. She said that if I cared about her, I would come and support her no matter what. I told her that I cared deeply, but being forced to separate myself from my fiancé felt disrespectful and hurtful. I said that I couldn't celebrate one sister while excluding the other person I love and plan to marry. Since then, my sister and I have been mostly silent. She sent me a few passive-aggressive messages about family loyalty and how I was putting my relationship over family. My parents are upset, saying I'm making the situation worse, but I feel like my sister didn't consider my feelings or include me in the decision. My friends have mixed opinions. Some say I'm justified because my fiancé should be included in family events, especially one as important as a wedding. Others say I'm overreacting and that sometimes you have to respect the bride's wishes, even if it means making tough choices about the guest list. Honestly, I am stuck. I want to support my sister, but I don't want to feel like I'm leaving my fiancé behind. I'm wondering if I'm the asshole here for refusing to attend, or if my sister is the one being unreasonable. What do you all think? AITA for refusing to let my parents move in with me after they kicked me out 15 years ago. I, 32F, own a small house with my husband, 34M, and our 2 kids, 7 and 5. It's nothing fancy, but it's ours. I worked really hard for it, especially considering where I came from. My parents, late 60s, recently asked to move in with us because their financial situation has gotten bad, and I told them no. Now, my entire extended family is calling me heartless, ungrateful, and cruel, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm justified. To explain, I need to go back a bit. When I was 17, I got pregnant. I know it was irresponsible, but I was a kid who made a stupid mistake. My parents were extremely religious and strict. I'd always been the golden child because I got good grades and never caused trouble. But when they found out I was pregnant, everything changed overnight. They told me I was a disgrace, that I'd ruined my future, and that they wouldn't support me raising a child under their roof. I begged them to let me stay until I finished high school. I promised I'd get a job, pay rent, whatever they wanted, but they refused. My mom told me that if I was old enough to get pregnant, I was old enough to figure things out myself. My dad drove me to my boyfriend's house. He was 19, with all my belongings in trash bags and told me I wasn't welcome home until I got my life together. It was one of the lowest moments of my life. My boyfriend's parents let me stay for a few months, but it was tense. Eventually, we broke up, and I was on my own. I lived in a shelter for a while, then got into a program for teen mothers that helped me finish school and get job training. I gave birth to a baby girl, but she passed away a few days after being born due to complications. It destroyed me, but that loss also pushed me to rebuild myself. I ended up going to community college, working part-time jobs, and eventually landing a stable job in accounting. I met my husband when I was 23, and he's been my rock ever since. We got married, bought our house, and now have 2 amazing kids. I haven't really had a relationship with my parents since I left. They reached out a few times over the years, usually around holidays or when someone in the family pressured them. It was always awkward, like they wanted to pretend nothing happened. Then about 2 months ago, I got a call from my mom. She sounded anxious and said they were having a hard time. My dad had retired early after some health problems, and they'd been scammed by a financial advisor. They lost a huge chunk of their savings and were struggling to pay their mortgage. She said they might lose their house soon and asked if they could move in for a while until they got back on their feet. I was stunned. I hadn't spoken to them in almost 5 years, and now they wanted to live with me? I told her I needed to think about it and talk to my husband. When I told him, he immediately said it was my call, but that he didn't think it was a good idea. He reminded me how much they hurt me and said he didn't want their negativity around our kids. So, a few days later, I called my mom back and told her no. I said I was sorry they were struggling, but I couldn't open my home to them. She got quiet and then asked if I was really going to abandon my parents after all they'd done for me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her that when I needed them most, they abandoned me. She started crying, saying they were just trying to teach me a lesson and that they didn't know it would go that far. After that, my dad called. He didn't apologize. He just said that I was being vindictive and that holding grudges wasn't healthy. He said they were my parents and I owed them respect and compassion. I told them respect has to be earned, and they lost mine when they chose their reputation over their daughter. Then the floodgates opened. My aunt called, my cousins texted, and even my younger brother, who stayed in touch with them, told me I was being dramatic. Everyone keeps saying family takes care of family. But I can't get over how quickly they threw me away when I was a scared teenager. I asked my brother why they couldn't stay with him, but he said his apartment is too small. He also told me that my mom cries every night about losing her only daughter twice. I'll admit, that one hit me hard. I don't want to be cruel. I know they're getting older, and I don't want them to end up homeless. But the idea of them living in my home, around my kids, pretending everything is fine, it makes my stomach twist. My husband told me he'd support whatever I decide, but I can tell he's relieved I said no. He knows how deep those scars run. My therapist also thinks I made the right choice and that I'm not obligated to let them back into my life on their terms. Still, the guilt is creeping in. I keep remembering small good memories, family dinners, vacations, my dad teaching me to ride a bike. It's not like they were always terrible people, but they chose to turn their backs on me when I was at my most vulnerable. And now, when they need help, I'm supposed to just forget all that? The other night, my mom left me a voicemail saying she understood I was angry, but begged me to reconsider. She said they'll be quiet guests, that they just need a roof and a chance. She even said they'd sleep in the garage if that's what it took. It broke my heart, but I still haven't called her back. Part of me worries that I'm doing to them what they did to me, that I'm letting bitterness guide me. But another part of me knows I've built this life through my own strength, without their support, and I don't owe them a place in it just because they're desperate now. I haven't made a final decision yet. They're supposed to lose their house in a few weeks, and I know my mom's probably waiting by the phone. Every day I debate calling her, but every time I think about it, I feel that 17-year-old version of me again, standing on the curb with trash bags full of clothes, watching my dad drive away. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my parents move in with me after they kicked me out 15 years ago. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she insulted my mental health struggles and blamed me for her canceled plans. This all started about a year ago, but the situation escalated recently, and now I'm completely at a loss. I, 28F, have struggled with anxiety and depression for most of my adult life. I've been in therapy and on medication, and while it's a continuous effort, I've been making real progress. My immediate family knows about it, and my sister, Emily, 32F, was always understanding, at least on surface. Emily got engaged last year and immediately started planning an elaborate wedding. It's important to note that she's always been the type who loves control and perfection when it comes to events. Early on, she asked me to be a bridesmaid, and I agreed. I didn't think it would be too much given my mental health, but I was willing to try for her sake. Fast forward a few months, and Emily starts dropping hints that she needs help with the wedding planning because her fiancé is busy with work. I offered to help with some minor tasks, like addressing invitations or organizing the seating chart. She initially said thanks, but then started texting me nonstop about every little detail. At first, I tried to keep up. I wanted to support her and show her that I could be reliable despite my struggles. But the more I got involved, the more overwhelmed I felt. I was juggling therapy, my job, and trying to maintain some semblance of normal life. The wedding planning took a toll on my anxiety. I told Emily I needed to step back a bit, explaining how the stress was affecting me, but she brushed it off. She said this was important to her, and she needed me. Then things got worse. At one point, Emily snapped at me during a group chat because I missed a deadline for sending RSVP details. She said something along the lines of, "If you can't handle this, maybe you shouldn't be involved at all." It hurt because I was trying my best. Things came to a head about 2 months before the wedding. Emily's fiancé called off the wedding. No one outside the couple really knew why, but Emily was devastated. She told the family it was because of unforeseen circumstances and that she needed time to process everything. Here's where the real drama started. Emily started blaming me for the wedding's collapse. She said my lack of support and constant mental health excuses made her fiancé doubt whether she could rely on anyone close to her. She said I was a liability and that my mental health was dragging everyone down. She even accused me of purposely sabotaging the wedding by not helping enough. I was blindsided. I called her to explain that my mental health struggles were real and that I never wanted to hurt her or make things harder. She didn't want to listen. Instead, she posted a vague but pointed status on social media about toxic people in your life and tagged me, implying I was the problem. Since then, I've refused to help her with anything wedding-related. She asked me to help plan a smaller gathering she wanted to throw to make up for the canceled wedding. I said no, explaining that I needed to focus on my well-being. She called me selfish, immature, and accused me of not being family. Our parents are caught in the middle and have been pressuring me to make peace with Emily. I don't want to lose my sister, but I also don't want to sacrifice my mental health or be blamed for something that wasn't my fault. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding plans and subsequent gatherings after she insulted my mental health and blamed me for her canceled wedding? Should I just suck it up for the sake of family? Or am I right to set boundaries here? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? I, 29F, come from a family that's always been close-knit with lots of gatherings, celebrations, and generally supportive relationships. My sister, 31F, and I have been pretty tight over the years, though we have very different personalities and ways of handling life. She's the outgoing, adventurous type, and I'm more introverted and reserved. We've always managed to respect each other's boundaries, but things have gotten complicated recently, and I'm starting to question if I'm the asshole here. It all started when my sister introduced me to her fiancé, Jake, about 6 months ago. Jake is a very charming, successful guy on the surface. He's got a great job, seems polite, and immediately started talking about their future together, including marriage and kids. At first, I thought he was a nice guy and tried to keep an open mind. But the more I got to know him, the more uncomfortable I became. One of the earliest red flags was how he talked about his exes. He made these offhand comments that were really dismissive and, frankly, disrespectful. It wasn't just normal venting. He would belittle them and make jokes at their expense. I mentioned once that it didn't feel very kind, and he shrugged it off like it was nothing. My sister, on the other hand, seemed unfazed and told me to not read too much into it. Things escalated when we were all at a family barbecue. Jake was drinking and started making jokes that felt borderline racist and sexist. Several family members looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. I spoke up and told him that those jokes were inappropriate. He laughed it off and said, "Lighten up, it's just a joke." My sister later pulled me aside and said I was being too sensitive and that Jake was just joking around. Over the next few months, I witnessed several instances where Jake behaved condescendingly toward my sister. He would interrupt her when she spoke, dismiss her opinions, and even criticized how she managed her job and finances. At one point, my sister confided in me that she felt a little belittled but didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She kept insisting that Jake loves her and that he's just stressed with wedding planning. The final straw came about 2 weeks ago. My sister invited me over to her apartment to talk about the wedding plans. I was excited to help, but when I arrived, Jake was there and immediately started taking over the conversation, dismissing my ideas and suggestions for the wedding. I tried to express my thoughts, but he interrupted me multiple times and then flat out told me that my ideas were too boring and not worth considering. I was taken aback and told him that I didn't appreciate being talked down to. That's when Jake snapped and said, "Look, if you're going to be like this, maybe you shouldn't be involved at all." My sister just sat there quietly, and I could tell she was uncomfortable but didn't say anything. After that encounter, I had a serious conversation with my sister. I told her that I was worried about how Jake treats her and that I didn't feel comfortable around him anymore. I said I was considering not attending the wedding if things didn't change. She got defensive, saying that I was overreacting and that she loved Jake and didn't want to hear negativity about him from me. She said if I couldn't support her, maybe I shouldn't be involved. Since then, I've told her I won't be attending the wedding unless Jake changes his behavior. I'm willing to try to mend things, but I refuse to be around someone who disrespects me and my sister like that. My parents are split on the issue. My mom thinks I'm being too harsh, and my dad supports me. My sister has barely spoken to me since, and several other family members have expressed disappointment, saying I'm causing drama. I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm the asshole for not going to the wedding and for confronting Jake, but I also don't want to enable someone who treats my sister poorly. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? AITA for telling my sister that she can't bring her boyfriend to our family Thanksgiving because of his behavior? So, this is a long one, and I've been debating whether or not to post, but here it goes. A little background. I'm 30F, married with 2 kids, ages 4 and 6, and my sister, 28F, has been dating this guy, Mark, for about 6 months. Our family has a pretty tight-knit Thanksgiving tradition. Every year, we gather in my parents' house, usually around 15 to 20 people, and it's been that way for at least a decade. It's a time for everyone to catch up, eat way too much, and enjoy some board games or football. No drama. Everyone gets along for the most part, and it's a cherished time. Now, Mark, I'll be honest, when my sister first started talking about him, I was cautiously optimistic. He seemed nice enough on the surface. But over the past few months, the more I've interacted with him, the more red flags I've noticed. I'm going to list a few examples that have made me uncomfortable and ultimately led me to the situation at Thanksgiving. His behavior around kids, he's met my kids a handful of times, mostly at my house or my parents' place. The first time was fine, but then I noticed some odd things. He's kind of rough with them, grabs them too hard, and once he got frustrated when my 4-year-old accidentally knocked over a drink and said, "Can't you be more careful? This isn't hard." That really rubbed me the wrong way. My kids are young and still learning boundaries. I never speak to them like that. Disrespectful to my parents at one family barbecue a couple of months ago, Mark was talking about how old-fashioned my parents are and how they don't get with the times. He rolled his eyes when my dad started telling a story and even interrupted my mom while she was trying to serve food. It was subtle but noticeable, and it made my parents uncomfortable. When I called him out gently later, he said I was overreacting and that they needed to lighten up. Drunken behavior Mark tends to drink a lot and gets loud and aggressive when he's had too much. At a small gathering, he got into a heated argument with one of my cousins over politics and almost came to blows. I ended up having to drag him outside to cool off, and my sister was embarrassed and tried to brush it off. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. General attitude, he's condescending and dismissive, especially towards women. I overheard him making a joke about how women overreact to everything during a conversation with my sister. She laughed it off, but didn't sit well with me. Okay, so fast forward to last week. My sister asked if she could bring Mark to Thanksgiving at my parents' house. I hesitated because I didn't want to cause family drama, but after thinking it through, I told her no. I explained my concerns about his behavior and how it could affect the family dynamic and the kids. I also mentioned that if she wanted to bring him, she could do that at her own house, but our family gathering was going to be a safe space for everyone, including my children. She flipped. She accused me of being controlling and said I was trying to dictate who she can and can't bring into her life. She said I was overreacting and that Mark was a good guy who just needed people to understand him better. My parents backed me up, saying they had noticed some of the things I mentioned and agreed it was better not to have Mark at the gathering. My siblings were split. Some thought I was right to be cautious, while others said I was being too harsh and that it was not my place. My sister has since been cold toward me and has barely spoken to me. She's even said she might skip Thanksgiving entirely if Mark isn't allowed to come. My husband and I are sticking to our guns because we don't want to risk making the family event uncomfortable or unsafe. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her boyfriend to Thanksgiving because of his behavior? Or should I have just let it slide to keep the peace? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how my future brother-in-law treated me. Even though everyone says I'm overreacting, I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, 30F. Growing up, we were close, but definitely had our fair share of sibling rivalry. Recently, however, things have gotten tense, mostly because of her fiancé, Jake, 32M. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm the asshole here or if I have every right to be upset. A bit of background, my sister and I have always been very different people. She's more outgoing, charismatic, and the golden child in our family, while I've always been more reserved and introverted. I'm a teacher, and she's in marketing. We've supported each other through a lot, but I've always felt she sometimes expects me to bend over backward for her, especially since she got engaged to Jake. Jake entered our lives about 2 years ago, and honestly, I never warmed up to him. From the beginning, he was dismissive towards me, often making snide remarks, interrupting me in conversations, and even once mocked my teaching job in front of family. My sister brushed it off, saying Jake's just sarcastic and that I was too sensitive. I tried to ignore it, hoping things would improve. Fast forward to the engagement party. It was supposed to be a joyful occasion, but Jake's behavior made it miserable. When I showed up, he barely acknowledged me and made several sarcastic comments about how I must be thrilled to finally have something to celebrate since my love life was non-existent. I tried to laugh it off, but it stung. Later that night, after a few drinks, he confronted me privately and said, "You're too uptight, and honestly, I don't think you deserve to be here. You're just my sister-in-law by default, not by choice." I was shocked and hurt. I told my sister immediately. She was furious, but said she would talk to him, though nothing changed. I tried to keep my distance from Jake, but since my sister and I live in the same city, I inevitably had to see him. The wedding planning started, and my sister asked me to help with certain tasks. I agreed reluctantly because I wanted to support her. However, every time I tried to give my input or help, Jake would undermine me. Once, when I suggested a caterer, Jake dismissed it as too boring and said I didn't know anything about fancy weddings. It was humiliating, especially in front of family and friends. The breaking point came a few weeks ago during a family dinner at their place. Jake started loudly criticizing my career choice and questioned why I wasn't ambitious enough. When I tried to defend myself, he said, "You're just jealous of my success, aren't you?" My sister didn't say much, only telling me to drop it and not ruin the night. I left early, furious and upset. Since then, I've been distancing myself more. When my sister invited me to the wedding, I hesitated. I don't want to be around Jake, and I feel like my sister doesn't have my back. I told her I might not come because of how Jake treats me, and she exploded, calling me dramatic, petty, and accused me of trying to ruin her special day. Now, the family is split. Some say I should just suck it up for my sister's sake, that weddings are about love and forgiveness, and that I'm making things worse. Others say I have every right to protect myself, and that Jake's behavior is unacceptable. I want to be there for my sister, but I'm also terrified of being disrespected and humiliated by Jake in front of everyone. Am I the asshole for refusing to attend the wedding because of how Jake treats me, or am I justified in putting my boundaries first? AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding after he demanded I cover half the cost, even though I was never involved in planning or invited to the engagement party. This is a long one, so buckle up. I, 33F, come from a pretty close-knit family, or at least I thought we were close-knit until recently. I have a younger brother, Jake, 28M, and growing up, we always had a bit of a rocky relationship. Not terrible, but competitive and distant in some ways. Over the past few years, we grew apart even more as our lives took different directions. I live in a different state, married with kids, and a stable job. Jake has bounced from job to job and doesn't have a steady income. That's important later. About 6 months ago, Jake announced he was engaged to his girlfriend, Lisa, who I had only met a couple of times at family gatherings. When he told me, I congratulated him, but he didn't seem super enthusiastic about including me in any of the plans. There were no calls about the engagement party, no texts about the wedding, nothing. Fast forward a couple of months, and out of the blue, Jake sends me a text saying he and Lisa have set a date for their wedding and that they're expecting me to pay half the cost. I thought this must be a joke. I replied asking what exactly he meant by paying half the cost, considering I had never been involved in any planning and was never formally invited to anything beyond the wedding date announcement. Jake got defensive and said it was traditional for siblings to chip in to help cover wedding costs. I tried to explain that I wasn't even involved in the engagement party or the bridal shower, and since I was not part of the planning, it felt unreasonable to ask me to cover half the wedding. He insisted that since I'm older and have a better job, it was expected. I reminded him that when I got married 5 years ago, he didn't pay for anything and didn't contribute financially to the wedding, nor was he asked to. I had been the one to pay for most things because I was lucky enough to have a good job. My parents helped as well, and everyone contributed what they could. Jake said that was different because I was the bride, and it was customary for siblings to help the couple get started. At this point, I felt like he was trying to guilt me into paying. I offered to help out by assisting with some planning or buying a gift, but not to cover half the wedding cost. Jake then started texting me nonstop, accusing me of being selfish and not supporting him or Lisa. He told me that families should stick together and help one another, especially for life events like this. I talked to my parents about this, hoping they would intervene or at least back me up. They were hesitant, saying that Jake might be struggling financially, but that families should support each other. They suggested I should reconsider and maybe offer to pay some amount, even if it's not half. I'm in a tough spot. I don't want to hurt my brother or cause a family rift, but I also feel completely blindsided and unfairly pressured. I never asked him to contribute to my wedding. I wasn't invited to the engagement party, and now he's demanding a large sum of money from me. I also can't afford to throw that kind of money around, especially when I feel it's not my responsibility. The situation has caused a lot of tension. Jake barely talks to me now, and family gatherings have been awkward since this all started. Some relatives say I should just pay to keep the peace. Others say Jake is being unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA, for refusing to pay half of my brother's wedding costs when I was never involved in the planning and wasn't even invited to his engagement party? Am I being selfish, or is this expectation unfair? AITA for refusing to take my sister's kids after she passed away because I already raised her once? I, 33F, have one older sister, Jenna, 36F, and we have never had what you'd call a healthy relationship. Growing up, our mom was kind but overworked and our dad was absent. Jenna was the wild one. She partied, skipped school, and got into trouble constantly. I was the responsible one who picked up after her messes, literally and figuratively. When I was 16 and Jenna was 19, she moved out and immediately got pregnant. The guy disappeared as soon as he found out, and Jenna moved back in with us with the baby. But moved in meant that she slept until noon, went out most nights, and left me with a screaming infant. I was still in high school, trying to juggle homework, part-time jobs, and diapers. Mom worked double shifts, so she didn't see most of it. Everyone praised Jenna for trying and told me I was such a good aunt. But I wasn't an aunt, I was a stand-in mom. When I was 21, I moved out for college on scholarship. I told myself I wasn't going to be anyone's backup plan again. Jenna stayed with mom, and eventually she lost custody of her first kid, let's call him Max, to our mom after she got caught with drugs in the car. Max grew up thinking of me as a second mom because I was always the one who showed up when things fell apart, school meetings, birthdays, emotional breakdowns. But I was still just the aunt on paper. Fast forward to now. Jenna eventually had 2 more kids, Ella, 7, and Grace, 5. Different dads, same pattern. She was always chasing a fresh start that never stuck. I live in a different state now, married to my husband, 34M, no kids yet, and I finally feel like I have a stable life. I love my job, we just bought a small house, and we've been talking about trying for a baby next year. 3 months ago, I got a call that flipped everything. Jenna had been in a car accident. She didn't make it. Ella and Grace survived because they weren't with her that day. I was devastated, of course, but also overwhelmed because I knew the question that would come next. Mom is 63 now, with health issues and limited mobility. She called me from the hospital crying, saying, "I can't take them, honey. They need you." CPS was already involved because Jenna had been under investigation for neglect before her death. There were no other close relatives besides us. I told Mom I needed time to think. My husband and I had a long, painful conversation. We don't have the space for 2 more kids in our house. We both work full-time, and neither of us has experienced parenting full-time, let alone parenting 2 traumatized kids who just lost their mother. The practical side of me knows it would be chaos. The emotional side of me knows that if I say no, they'll go into foster care, and that guilt is crushing. But then there's this deep resentment in me that I can't ignore. Because I already did this. I already gave up pieces of my life to raise Jenna's first child, and I swore I wouldn't do it again. I love my nieces, but I don't want to give up everything I've built just to clean up another one of Jenna's disasters. I can't be the backup parent forever. When I told Mom and CPS that I couldn't take them, Mom broke down. She said she'd find a way, even though she's barely getting by. Max, who's 17 now and living with his girlfriend's family, called me crying, asking why I wouldn't keep the family together. He said Jenna always believed I was the only one she could trust with her kids. That hit hard, because I know it's true. She always counted on me to catch her. CPS placed Ella and Grace with a foster family temporarily while they search for permanent placement. I've been getting calls from relatives I haven't spoken to in years, calling me heartless. One even said I killed family loyalty. My husband supports me, but I can tell he's struggling too. He said if I really want to take them, we'd figure it out, but that he'd be lying if he said he wanted this life. The worst part was attending the funeral. Everyone looked at me like I was the villain. Mom could barely speak to me. Max ignored me completely. I sat there feeling like I was grieving my sister and my entire family at once. Since then, I've had moments where I almost call CPS back to say I changed my mind. I've even dreamed about Ella and Grace showing up at my door with suitcases, and I'm hugging them like it's the only right thing left to do. But then I wake up and feel sick because I know if I took them, I'd be giving up the peace I fought so hard to build. I didn't choose to be a parent. I didn't choose to raise my sister's kids once already. And I can't keep sacrificing my own future because Jenna never got hers together. Still, it's hard not to feel like a monster when I think about those little girls growing up thinking their aunt didn't want them. Last week, Mom called again. She told me CPS found a family willing to adopt both girls together. She said they're good people, that the girls are safe and seem happy. But she also said she'll never forgive me for letting strangers raise her granddaughters. I didn't even know what to say. I just cried after the call. My husband held me and said, "You can't save everyone." I keep turning that line over in my head because it's true, but it doesn't make me feel better. Now, months later, I still get messages from family members saying I should have stepped up. Even my coworkers, after I told one in confidence, seemed shocked. One said, "I could never let my niece go into foster care." That one really stung. I don't know anymore if I made the right choice or if I just made the one that hurt the least. I still send gifts and letters through CPS to make sure the girls know I love them. I hope when they're older, they'll understand I wasn't rejecting them. I was protecting myself from becoming someone bitter and broken. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to take in my sister's kids after she died, even though I already raised one of her children when I was younger. AITA for telling my brother's fiancée she shouldn't marry him because I don't think he's changed. So, my brother, Jake, 29, is getting married next spring to his fiancée, Emma, 27. I'm 31F genuinely happy for him, or at least I want to be, but I've been having this gnawing feeling that I can't shake, and I might have completely crossed a line when I acted on it. Jake and I grew up in a pretty strict household. Our dad was military. Our mom was the tough love type, and emotions weren't exactly encouraged. I always tried to be the peacemaker, but Jake, he was the rebel. He was the kid who'd sneak out, blow his allowance on dumb stuff, and charm his way out of every consequence. When we were teenagers, he'd borrow my things without asking, lie about it, and somehow make it sound like my fault for not keeping track. By the time I left for college, I honestly couldn't stand him. But then, in our early 20s, he had this wake-up call moment. He'd been in some minor legal trouble for drunk driving, nobody hurt, thankfully, and he promised he'd change. He went to therapy, quit drinking for a while, started a new job, and slowly earned back our parents' trust. I was cautiously optimistic, but I never fully bought it. Jake's always been the type to say whatever people want to hear. Fast forward to now. Jake's been with Emma for about 4 years. She's sweet, smart, and has this calmness about her that's honestly impressive given how high energy my brother can be. She's also very trusting, like almost naive. When they first started dating, Jake was still occasionally drinking socially, and there were a few nights he called me to pick him up because he was too drunk to drive. He'd tell Emma he was working late. I told him he needed to come clean, And he promised me he did, but I later learned from a mutual friend that Emma never knew about those nights. That stuck with me. I didn't say anything then because I thought maybe it was just early relationship stuff and not worth blowing up over. But earlier this year, I heard something else. A friend of mine saw Jake at a bar in another city. Same night, he told Emma he was on a work trip. When I casually asked him about it, he brushed it off and said, "Come on, I just grabbed a drink with some co-workers. You know, I don't have a problem anymore." He said it with that same old smirk, like he knew he could talk his way out of anything. Then last month, Emma called me asking for help planning a surprise engagement party for Jake. She was so genuinely excited, talking about how he's the most honest person she's ever met, how he's so committed to being a better man. And something inside me just broke a little. I couldn't stand hearing it. The next week, we were at a family dinner, and after a few glasses of wine, I pulled Emma aside and told her, quietly but directly, that she should think carefully before marrying my brother. I said that Jake has a history of lying, especially when it comes to drinking, and that I wasn't convinced he'd really changed. I told her I'd seen him lie to her face before. She went pale and asked what I meant. I told her about the nights he called me for rides and said he was working late. She didn't say much, just thanked me for being honest and said she needed a process. I figured she might talk to him, maybe even postpone things. Instead, 2 days later, Jake showed up at my apartment, absolutely furious. He said I sabotaged his relationship, that Emma was now questioning everything and crying nonstop. He said I'd ruined his reputation with her family and that I had no right to interfere. I tried to explain that I just didn't want her walking into something blind, but he wasn't hearing it. Our parents are divided. My mom thinks I overstepped and that it wasn't my place to judge. My dad thinks I was right to warn Emma if I truly believed she was being misled. My younger sister, 25, thinks I was being protective in the wrong way, that I should have talked to Jake first before going to his fiancée. Here's the kicker. Last week, Emma texted me. She said she appreciated my honesty, but that she and Jake talked and are moving forward stronger than ever. She said she forgives me, but would prefer some space until things settle. I don't blame her for that, but I feel like everyone's looking at me like the villain now. What really messes me up is that I don't know if I did it out of genuine concern or out of resentment. I can admit that deep down, part of me wanted him to face consequences. I watched him charm his way through every screw-up, always landing on his feet while others clean up the mess. Maybe I wanted to finally be the one person who didn't let him get away with it. But another part of me truly believed Emma deserved the truth. I didn't exaggerate anything. I just told her what I knew. And yet, I can't stop wondering if I crossed a line by getting involved at all. Jake keeps texting me things like, "I hope you're happy. You nearly blew up my engagement. And our mom won't stop telling me to apologize before the holidays." Last night, I got a long message from Emma's maid of honor, basically accusing me of being jealous and lonely and saying I try to ruin their happiness. That stung more than I want to admit. I've been single for a few years now, focusing on work and just trying to get by, and I can't deny that maybe seeing my brother so celebrated hit some nerve I didn't expect. Still, I can't shake this uneasy feeling that Jake's living on borrowed time before he messes up again. I know that's not my problem anymore, but I also can't pretend it doesn't bother me. I keep wondering what I'm supposed to do if, down the line, Emma calls me crying because something happened. Do I just say, "I told you so"? Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe I should have let her find out on her own. But isn't it worse to watch someone you care about walk straight into a situation you know is built on half-truths? Now the entire family group chat is awkward. Jake hasn't spoken to me directly since that fight. My mom keeps saying I owe him an apology for meddling, but my dad quietly told me he thinks I did what a sister should. I don't even know anymore if I was trying to protect Emma or punish Jake. So, AITA for telling my brother's fiancée she shouldn't marry him because I don't think he's changed. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their wedding after they call me controlling. I, 32F, bought my house 5 years ago after saving for nearly a decade. It's a small but beautiful place in the countryside with a large backyard that overlooks a small lake. Ever since I bought it, my family has treated it like a vacation home, always asking if they can come over for long weekends, barbecues, etc. I don't mind most of the time, but I'm protective of the property because I worked incredibly hard for it and I pay all the costs myself. My younger brother Jake, 28M, got engaged last year to his fiancée, Mia, 27F. She's nice enough, but she's always had this Pinterest-perfect attitude toward everything. She wants things to look aesthetic for Instagram, and she's obsessed with planning events that look spontaneous but clearly aren't. When they started planning their wedding, Mia called me and asked if they could have it at my house. She said the lake and backyard would make the perfect rustic backdrop. I hesitated. Hosting a wedding is a huge deal, and my place isn't equipped for 100-plus people, which was their estimated guest count. She promised it would be simple and small, just close friends and family. Against my better judgment, I said I'd think about it. A few days later, my brother called and said they'd already told people the venue would be the lake house. Apparently, invitations had gone out. I was furious that they assumed it was a yes before I'd agreed. Jake brushed it off, saying, "Come on, you love hosting. It'll be fine." So I decided to set some conditions. No more than 40 guests. They'd have to rent portable bathrooms, since my plumbing can't handle a crowd. They'd be responsible for cleanup and any damages. No loud music past 10 p.m. because of my neighbors. When I listed those, Mia acted like I'd just told her to cancel the wedding entirely. She complained that portable bathrooms ruined the vibe and that cutting the guest list was impossible. She also said she wanted to bring in a caterer, a live band, and a DIY cocktail station. I told her that's exactly why I was hesitant. It sounded like a huge production. Jake told me I was being controlling and unhelpful, that I should be happy for him instead of making everything about rules. I told him they could find a venue that suited their vision, but my house wasn't it. Mia went silent for a few days, then texted me this long message about how she felt betrayed that I wouldn't support their dream. Fast forward a few months, and they ended up booking a local barn venue. But the drama didn't stop there. About a week before the wedding, Jake asked if they could still use my backyard for their first look photos. I said yes, as long as they kept it quick and didn't bring a whole entourage. On the day of, I was home getting ready to leave for work when suddenly a caravan of cars started pulling up. It wasn't just them, it was their entire wedding party, 2 photographers, a makeup artist, and some kind of stylist. I went outside to find Mia directing people like a film shoot. There were tripods, garment bags, champagne bottles, and someone setting up a giant floral arch right on my lawn. I asked what was going on, and Mia said, "We're just taking a few photos. Don't worry, we'll clean up." An hour later, my backyard looked like a tornado hit it. Makeup products on my patio furniture, food wrappers everywhere, muddy footprints on the deck. I asked them to wrap up because I needed to leave, and Mia snapped. "Can you relax for one day? It's my wedding." Jake told me to stop acting like I own the place. I just stared at him and said, "Jake, I do own the place." They left in a hurry, but I spent 2 hours cleaning up before work. A few days later, Mia posted their wedding photos online, and sure enough, half of them were taken in my backyard. She tagged my location in the post, and suddenly I had random people messaging me, asking if my property was available for events. I asked her to remove the geotag and not use my house as a venue promotion. She said, "It's already public, people love it. You should be proud." I told her she had no right to turn my home into a marketing backdrop. That's when things blew up. Jake called, furious that I'd embarrassed Mia by making it about money and property. I told him I wasn't talking about money. I just didn't want strangers showing up because of a tag. He said I was selfish and dramatic, and that family is supposed to share. A week later, my parents called to say I should apologize for ruining the vibe of their wedding. I reminded them that I had literally allowed them to use my house for photos, and that they'd taken advantage of that kindness. My dad said I should let it go, but my mom admitted that Mia's behavior was a bit much. Now here's where things get messy, eh? About 2 months later, Jake texted again. Apparently Mia is starting a boutique wedding planning business, and she wants to feature my property as one of her preferred venues. I laughed out loud because I thought he was joking. But no, she actually wanted to advertise my home online and bring future couples here for styled shoots. When I told her absolutely not, she said I was being spiteful because I don't like seeing other people happy. She even tried to guilt trip me by saying it could help me financially since she'd give me exposure. I told her exposure doesn't pay for lawn repair. After that, Mia blocked me on everything and told Jake to handle his sister. He sent me one final message saying, "I hope you're happy tearing this family apart." So now things are tense. My parents think I could have handled it with more grace, but several friends say Jake and Mia were entitled from start. I feel like I've been treated like an event space instead of person. For context, Jake and I were pretty close before all this. He used to come over for dinner once a week. Since the wedding, he hasn't spoken to me except through angry texts. I miss him, but I'm also still mad. Every time I think about the way Mia snapped at me in my own yard, I get angry all over again. Part of me wonders if I should have just sucked it up for one day, but the other part knows that letting them walk all over me would have set a terrible precedent. If I hadn't drawn a line, I'm pretty sure they'd already be scheduling the next content shoot here. So, Reddit-style world. Am I the asshole for refusing to let them use my property again and for calling out their behavior, even if it caused a family rift? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.